Welcome back to A Rogue Theory, where we explore the origins, influences, and playability of your favorite archetypes. Remember to like and subscribe to escape the meta curve the next time you play, maybe. There are thousands of monsters and archetypes that litter the Yu-Gi-Oh world and its stars, but only one archetype truly rules the cosmos, and they are the most codependent, dysfunctional group of Imperial and Rebel scum you will ever know. They are comprised of 8 pilots, 8 ships, 2 spells, and 2 trap cards. Now, while there are no mysteries of the Kozmo archetype being related to both The Wizard of Oz and the original Star Wars trilogy, thanks to the work of TGS Anime and others alike, I think a brief cross-reference reboot or sequel makes for decent ad revenue and a good joke about the two franchises' reattempts to cash in on their intellectual property. Yes, I'm being meta.
You son of a bitch! I'm in!
Tin Can represents the fusion of the Tin Man and R2-D2. Straw Man is a fusion between the Scarecrow and C-3PO. Scaredy Lion is a mix between the Cowardly Lion and Chewbacca. Farm Girl represents Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, and based on the release date of this archetype, Luke Skywalker or Mara Jade from the Expanded Universe. But if you want to attribute this character to being Rey from the newer series, I'd be on board since the themes and roles of the Star Wars franchise never really change. Sword Trooper represents the Flying Monkeys and Stormtroopers. Wicked Witch represents the Wicked Witch of the East from the novel, Darth Maul, and the wielder of the ruby slippers that were originally silver in the books. You can note this by her shoes. Good Witch is the combination of the Good Witch from the novel, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, and Yoda from Star Wars. But old Luke Skywalker could also be placed as this character for the newer generation since he provides a mentor role. Dark Lady is your mix-up between Darth Vader and the Wicked Witch of the West. While most newer fans would place Kylo Ren in this position, he isn't the final antagonist of the newer series. Yes, I am intentionally avoiding spoilers.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Sliprider references the ruby slippers in name, and by the feature of it being also a spaceship, it also references its ability to take the user anywhere. And finally, Kozmo Town references the Emerald City from The Wizard of Oz and Coruscant from Star Wars. Now, while that covers all the major cards, I wanted to leave the less important ones for my newer Monday series, Design Hot Takes, where I look at the design of cards and cover them in 1-minute videos. Alright, before we begin, there's a few things I wanted to cover. All pilots are psychic monsters, and as a quick effect, they can all banish themselves from the field to summon a higher level Kozmo monster from the hand. All the ships are machine monsters, and they all float, providing resource advantage upon destruction by either summoning or adding a lower level Kozmo monster from the deck. With that out of the way, onto the cards. Kozmo Tin Can is the best pilot of the entire archetype, as he can search for any 3 Kozmo cards from your deck and randomly add one of them to your hand during the end phase. While the rest are sent to the graveyard, it's not a real problem since the deck has such good recycling and recursion that you'll easily be able to access those ships or pilots in an extended game state. Kozmo Straw Man is one of the better pilots of the deck, but while he gives you access to reviving banished Kozmo monsters, his effectiveness only comes in after your first turn, since he can't net you any real advantage if he's your starting play. Because of this, I wouldn't recommend typically playing more than 2 of him in the main deck since he requires some minimal setup. Kozmo Scaredy Lion is a burn card that burns you. While perhaps trading for a net 1000 life point difference against your opponent might seem effective, in truth it's counterintuitive for the core strategy of the deck, as it plays counter to the cards like Straw Man and the field spell that wish for cards to be in the banish zone. Kozmo Farm Girl is considered one of the necessary cards for the archetype to push for game due to its ability to pressure damage by swapping itself for the card it searches during the battle phase. While in truth it's more of a cheeky 1 or 2 of due to its utility, most decks will vie for 2 to 3 copies since it has decent attack stats compared to the other normal summonable cards of this archetype. Kozmo Sword Trooper allows the deck to recycle pilots from the graveyard. While historically this card has seen little to no play, I think it's imperative to include 1 copy moving forward since the most recent ban list allowed emergency teleport to come to 2. Effectively meaning since Tin Can is more accessible, you'll likely have a psychic monster in your graveyard that you'll want to revive more often. Kozmo Wicked Witch is a card that most decks tend to not run, or if they do, only at 1. Personally, I think that is a mistake, as in certain matchups preventing destruction and the possibility of an OTK is critical to surviving a turn and then winning the game. But perhaps more importantly, in the many games you play, you'll sometimes find yourself lacking a ship to protect you, and at the very least, if she's in your hand, you have a chance to survive. Kozmo Good Witch is a card I wouldn't recommend running since its effect is only good on your turn, and while it can bait out a monster negate on your turn, more and more decks are becoming immune to targeting or have a boss monster that happens to be a link card that can't be flipped face down. Kozmo Sliprider is an in-archetype spell or trap removal. However, since it only pops a card on summon, and you want to have a good balance of ships to pilots, it's meant to be used as removal for your opponent's key cards or to deny them from stopping your battle phase. Kozmo Delta Shuttle is terrible. While it can synergize with Sword Trooper, it's rare you'll ever have enough on-field board presence to utilize their effects together. Seriously, just don't play this card. Kozmo Landwalker is meant to protect your weaker Kozmo monsters from being targeted by removal or battle, but due to how the deck plays, it rarely ever has the chance for said effect to be relevant. Kozmo Dogfighter tries to solve the issue of on-field board presence by providing a token every standby phase, but since the token doesn't float and Dogfighter really only floats down into pilots and into Sliprider, it's most likely not going to be an effective card. Kozmo Forerunner is one of the better cards of this archetype thanks to it being untargetable, but due to its high level and lack of effects on summon, it's typically ran as a one-of since it only gives you life points on your standby phase, and it usually won't stick around long enough for that effect to matter. Kozmo Dark Destroyer is a mandatory 3-of in the deck, as it is the best ship within the entire archetype, since it is untargetable, can destroy a monster on summon, and happens to have 3000 attack and also be a level 8 monster for XYZ plays. Kozmo Dark Eclipser is a great card that happens to fall short of being a mandatory 3-of. While it can't be targeted by your opponent's card effects and can negate trap cards more than once per turn, it frustratingly can't float into another monster on the field when it's destroyed. While this isn't a problem when you have the extra monster on the field, it sucks since that is the very thing the deck struggles to do consistently. Kozmo Dark Planet is a card you'll never run since its summoning requirements are too hard, but if you ever manage to get it out with some extra disruption, it can probably auto-win the game against certain decks. Too bad it sucks, and it doesn't float down into a monster when destroyed. Kozmo Town is one of the few cards that makes this clunky archetype work since it can mulligan the cards you have in hand for new ones, and it can recur your banished Kozmo monsters for recyclable play. And probably best of all, it can add a Kozmo card from your deck to your hand when your opponent is finally forced to destroy it. Due to all this, it's a mandatory 3-of for me. Kozmo Light Sword is strictly garbage and won't provide you any real support unless you have the rare chance when you find your farm girl needs to push for game and you happen to have this card in hand. Kozmojo allows the deck to have a second form of removal by non-targeting banishment and allows your ships to dodge your opponent's effects that might not destroy them, giving you the ability to be flexible and disruptive with less than stellar hands. Cosmourning is a weird card fundamentally since it can prevent your opponent from stacking up their graveyard with monsters that need to be destroyed by battle. However, since this effect doesn't apply to any other form of destruction, it's not that good and you'll probably never run it, even though its graveyard effect can sometimes buy you an extra turn. Okay, now that we know all the cards that are currently released for the archetype, the effects of each card, and the influences behind each card, we can finally speak to the competitive viability of this archetype. While on paper it seems clunky and unable to defeat the meta, it's probably one of the most resilient decks within the entire game, and weirdly works better in practice than in theory. For combos today, we have none, so here's the list I'm currently playing around with. While this deck list might seem odd, it's meant to take full power of the Kozmo's ability to dodge harmful effects, but keep its overall playstyle and ability to slowly grind out your opponent's resources to win the game. It also takes use of the newly printed card, Crossout Designator, to synergize with the field spell's ability to retrieve a banished Kozmo monster, or its ability to stop certain meta plays your opponent will be making. While it won't be making any flashy plays, you can combine the Kozmos with other non-normal summon engines to spice up their playstyle and have a nice alternative if it doesn't automatically win you the game. Now, while the Kozmo archetype might be one of the biggest nostalgia trips for fans young and old, it is without a doubt one of my favorite decks that will always go the distance if you give it time or wait for some future support.